And welcome back to Sullivan's Unheard Voices. It's my pleasure to have Allison here today to talk about firearms because this is one of those things where, so I met you at a Pride Festival, right?
Yes, yes.
And what you have crafted is simply amazing and so affirming. And the things that you do and the steps that you take to make people feel welcome, but also receive firearms training is nothing short of just awesome. And I really
Thank you.
appreciate that you do that in this space.
Thank you so much.
How did you get started in firearms?
Well, I think it's hard to grow up as a child and play video games and not find out about firearms in some capacity. And so that would probably be the starting point for me. And I think as a younger person, I was always very curious and interested. I loved trying to go to the range. And every blue moon, my father would take me, but I never had any kind of real training or anything. And then let's just skip ahead a bazillion years.
Okay, that's fair.
And Donald Trump comes to be a president of this country. And that in itself was pretty weird. But then what we started seeing was violence towards certain demographic groups. And I'm not here to talk about all of that. We can look that up later. But the point is, I started thinking, well, this is kind of scary. And I want to be sure that if I'm going to get in a fight, I'm the one telling the story and I'm the one walking away, And so I hooked up with this group called the Socialist Rifle Association, which you don't have to be socialist, nor do you have to own a rifle to be a part of. But it's a national nonprofit organization about queer firearms training and community sustainability, stuff like that. So
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. I think it's just sra.org or something. If you do a Google search for Socialist Rifle Association, you can surely find a chapter near you and reach out to them and ask questions. And after a few years of that, let me think. Yeah, after about a year or two being involved there, I started learning from a professional trainer. And his... I don't know if I should say his name.
You don't have to.
Here's what I'll say is he's a professional instructor and I love him, and he teaches at the Albany Rifle and Pistol Club. And about 80 to 90% of what I know I learned from him because I didn't want to guess.
Yeah.
I don't like guessing, especially when something so dangerous is at hand. I mean, pun not intended, but literally.
Yeah.
And so after a few years of studying with him, I decided that I wanted to take that knowledge and bring it to my socialist rifle people and to my other queer people. And so I became NRA certified, and that lasted 2 years. And I'm still available. I love training with my friends. I compete when I can. And I could talk about that more, but I think that's enough for an opening statement, probably.
I appreciate that so much. And one of the things that I like to talk about on this program in particular ad nauseum is violence of any kind is not welcome. Kindness is the key to being able to exist in this life. However, there are instances where you have to defend yourself, and putting yourself in a position for survival is one of those key ingredients. And I get a lot of people that come up to me and ask me about like how to protect my children, how to protect my adult children who are autistic. Mm-hmm. And one of the questions that I get from other people is like, well, what kind of firearm should I get? So if we're talking like home defense, right? What do you recommend as like the starter sort of go-to that's going to do the job, but not, you know what I mean?
May I circle back to something you said
Please.
quickly?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you started talking about violence and so first off, most of my training that I have done and that I provide for people is what I would call like proficiency based.
Yeah.
So it's more like, this is the tool. Here's how you use it effectively.
Yes.
What you do with it is up to you. So I don't specialize in self-defense kind of training, although like we're talking, but it's a tool that it's not difficult to figure out how to use.
I appreciate the nuance.
Thank you thank you. And I do agree that the way I look at violence is it's a language, and we should try at all costs to avoid using that language.
100%.
Okay, but when someone has decided to use that language, if you don't respond in that language, then you're going to lose that argument. So let's move ahead. So what kind of firearm to get? This is the kind of subject that Google cannot even quantify how many pages there are on the internet of
Tell me about it.
What is the best for self-defense or home defense or whatever. And so I boil this down to a couple very simple things where it has to be comfortable in your hands and you have to be able to handle it. Because the simplest statement would be, well, get the thing that fires the biggest bullet possible. But not everybody, because of their stature or because of arthritis or because of the size of their hands, etc., can necessarily do that. And so I think also, if we're going to talk, let's narrow it down to something like home defense.
Okay.
Just for the sake of having a context. I would say two things are really important there, at least. Number one is the space that you're in, what's immediately outside of the space that you're in, and how maneuverable do you need to be. So like if you own a larger house, you could get away with something like a rifle or a shotgun maybe, especially if there's no one living immediately outside around you. Whereas if you're in an apartment or a smaller quarters, you probably need something a little smaller and more maneuverable. And also you want to, if God forbid you have to pull the trigger, like try and have ammunition that's not going to continue through so many walls, that's going to disperse its energy as soon as it makes contact with something. And again, this is stuff you can find out all about on the internet. There's so many things. And I'll talk about a story that I was involved in. So only one time in my life have I ever had a person uninvited try to break in my house. And this is while I was home, and this was in Salem. Big Salem energy. I was living in a house off Chemeketa Street in Northeast, and I don't know why, but someone was trying to come into my house.
That's terrifying.
And I was upstairs, and I heard the front door opening. And I called down to see if it was my roommate. I called out their name, and there was no response. It was just quiet. And then a moment later, I hear the door slam. I don't know if someone's in my house. I don't know what's going on. So I reached for the thing that I have the most training with, that's most comfortable in my hand, that I'm the fastest with. And for me, that was a pistol. In particular, it was a 1911, which you could look that up if you want. And you'll see all kinds of stuff about the 1911. And some people love it. Some people hate it. That's not the point. But the point is, when we're in times of distress, we don't rise to the occasion. We sink to our lowest level of training.
Yeah.
And so I had other choices I could have made, more powerful choices. But for me, that was instinctively the thing I grabbed. And I ran around my house, and this person was gone. And I was fine with that. I didn't want to hurt anybody.
And I think that's the biggest misnomer out there, right? Is that just because you have a firearm means that you want or intend on hurting somebody. No, actually, it's kind of the opposite. You just want to make sure that you're going to be safe in your own home, right?
Are you asking or telling me?
I don't know. So I have here's my relationship with firearms is interesting. Mm-hmm. So I was in the military, and okay. I know how to work an M16 and I know how to work a 9mm. Okay. But then I made a personal vow when I got done with the military that I would not be attached to guns in any way, because I'm very much a pacifist. And so I'm learning as we discuss. And so when I throw something like that at you, I'm trying to process so I understand. Okay. Because this is all new to me and I'm fascinated, but I know nothing. Sure. If that makes sense.
Okay, sure. So what I'll say, here's my approach. The world that I live in is primarily for sport.
Okay.
I primarily want to shoot for sport. Do I carry on my person when I'm out in the world? Yes, I have a concealed carry permit, but for me, most of my study and most of my work is about being safe, being
Yeah.
accurate, being fast, having a good time with friends. And I mean, maybe it's the same way that like a chef is efficient with their knives. Like surely a chef could, you know, cut your throat out before you could blink or something. But
But that's not the whole purpose of the point.
no, that's not the purpose. And I really, when I was younger and I started carrying, I moved through the world in a way that was really super duper paying attention to every little thing and thinking about entrances and exits. And if you start looking online for advice on concealed carrying and how to do it right, you'll see guys saying stuff like that. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that way of life. For me, it's a little high stress. So when I walk in a place, I do try and pay attention to who's there, think about where doors are. But I'm not daydreaming about like saving the restaurant or
Yeah.
something, you know?
I appreciate that.
Does that make sense? And am I responding in the ballpark to what you're asking?
Yeah.
I don't want to go on wild tangents.
No, not at all. That actually helps make frame of reference for me as well, right? Because like that's one of those pieces of firearms that I keep forgetting about is all the competitions and the proficiency in that piece. And I don't know why I just spaced that until this moment in time, but I did.
Well, I think something that's really funny that a lot of people do is like they'll have a tool. Let's pretend it's a pocket knife.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of us walk around with that pocket knife thinking like, when am I going to get to use this pocket knife? Does anyone need a box opened? Like, what can I do with it? And so what I've had to do as a firearm owner is to a degree divorce myself of that, where it's there, it's available, but it's not the first thing I'm thinking about or reaching for. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And I appreciate that because like hypervigilance, I would imagine would just get in the way of your mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like I said, if someone wants to do that, that's fine. And, I want to strike a balance.
Yeah.
So yeah. Awesome questions though.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So can I ask you some questions?
Of course.
Yeah. So, what was it like, being in the military and being around these things and then being discharged and are you no longer active?
No, I'm no
What
longer
years
active.
was this?
1998 to 2002.
Oh my gosh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were in the best of times and then right up to like about when things started going into very interesting directions.
Yeah, I missed
let's
Iraq
just
by
say.
30 days. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, and also you've borne witness to all kinds of, just through media, firearm violence and gun violence, things like
That
things
seems to
like
be like
that.
the only
So-
thing that you see on the media these days. To a certain extent, right? And it's all about that kind of violent stuff. And that's part of the reasons I started this podcast is because I get tired of all of the conversations about negativity and violence. It's like you get enough of that in the mainstream media.
Yeah, Tool wrote a song about that. Do you like Tool at all?
I do. It's my go-to. I sing Maynard all the time at karaoke.
Yeah, he has a great voice. Yeah, what was that song on 10,000 Days where it's not Angels on the Sidelines?
Oh, yes.
It's like Violence at a Distance. I need
Vicarious. Yeah, vicarious I live while vicarious I live while I watch the whole world die. Yeah.
Okay, so my question then is, what was it like for you as a person who this was a tool that was integral to your daily work, at least in some capacity? I don't know what your MOS was, but then coming to the world and deciding like, I want to clear myself of this completely. How did that feel and what inspired that?
I respected the amount of power that a weapon has.
Mm-hmm.
But I also respect my impulsivity. and I respect the training that I had in the military in particular was not to be proficient, was not to, no, it was to kill. That was our military training, was just straight up. Even though I was a mechanic, the whole goal was to kill. And so I knew I was not a killer, and I knew same reason like I won't hunt. Like I can't be responsible for taking somebody or something's life. I just can't do that. I would not be able to sleep at night for a long time. Like just the other day, I accidentally hit a cat with my car and it wrecked me for a month.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was horrible.
Oh my God.
Totally.
I'm so sorry that happened.
Totally a dog's fault too. Like a dog chased the cat right in front of me, right in front of the family. I was so heartbroken having to sort of interact with that. And
That's
so it's
a
like
really smart dog, though.
Yeah, right?
I'm so sorry that happened to you.
Oh, that's awesome.
That is awful.
It is awful. Perfect timing. The joke, though. I so appreciate that so much. But yeah, so when I got rid of the military, I just made a commitment. Like, I don't need to have that around.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there are many other ways to defend yourself if the need arises.
Or walk away or run away or, yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what it sounds like is it's the training and the submersion culture that really helped you understand what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
So to play off that, I think one of the biggest issues is a lack of training. And I really wish that, so like, for example, let's get a little political for a second.
Yeah.
So I'm a leftist.
Yeah.
I'm not a liberal. I'm not a moderate. I'm a leftist. So
I resonate with that so much.
Okay. But. And if anyone out there is curious the difference between a leftist and a liberal, do a little Google search. You'll find all kinds of information. Or do some other kind of search.
Yeah.
Do whatever search turns you on. I don't care. So I wish that awareness and exposure and information and training were much higher on the liberal agenda in terms of curbing gun violence than just taking them away.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that fundamentally, because the reality is it's very, very, very unlikely, given any scenario, where you're going to be able to take all the weapons away from people.
It's impossible.
It's impossible.
People will just bury them in their yard. And who's gonna come around looking? The cops? Like they want you to have guns because they have guns. Yeah. And I don't mean because they have guns while they're working. I mean they own guns at home.
Yep. Most police officers I know are pro Second Amendment.
Okay, so moving on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I could see a huge benefit in society if we had larger training programs and awareness and activities like that sort of kind of, instead of framing the conversation about firearms as violence, like you're saying, I see now where you're going, kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong, it would be much better to have training and education and conversation about the lethality of firearms and why it's important to have safety around firearms, as opposed to the entire narrative being around everything else.
I mean, it's the same thing where, like, is abstinence really a means of not making babies? Yeah. And anywhere you go that doesn't have sex education has higher teen pregnancy rates, right? It's the same exact thing to me. Or it's human nature. We want things, and we may as well know how to be safe about it. That's my whole shtick there. But also maybe I'm biased because I like guns and I like teaching and I like learning. I don't know. Could we turn off the heat?
I hope so. It's freaking hot in here. We're going to pause for a second and we're going to figure out how to do that. And we're back. Thank you for that. I was roasting. So
it's too much.
For those of you at home, it was 75 in here. That's just too hot. It's too hot. So now take me through your experience with competition shooting then. Like, how did you get started in that?
Okay. So I used to play airsoft. I loved
Mhm.
airsoft. And for a couple of reasons, I stepped away from that. It's not important. The game is great.
Yeah.
And I needed something physical that was going to challenge me. And uh, I don't even actually remember what inspired me to find it or get into it because none of my friends had ever done it.
Yeah.
And when I found it, it became one of the most fun and gratifying sports I've ever been a part of. And also, in terms of learning, in terms of training, it has been the greatest bang for buck, pun not intended, in terms of skills building and meeting people and learning new things.
Okay.
So I would say sometime around 2020 or something, it was kind of like a start of COVID hobby, I
Okay.
think. Yeah.
So then in terms of the competition itself, is it the kind where you have the targets and you're moving through the course? Or is it more of like you're standing along in a line and sort of target shooting your way?
Okay. I have participated in two kinds
Okay.
of competition shooting, and you've actually outlined both of them. So the first one is called USPSA,
Okay.
which stands for United States Practical Shooting Association. And with USPSA, there are what are called stages. And a stage has areas that are in bounds and out of bounds. And you have to shoot all of the targets from the inbounds. And in a nutshell, whoever has the fastest time with the best hits wins. And there's so much more about it. If you're curious about USPSA, just look that up and infinite information about it. And the second kind is called speed steel. And in speed steel, you are stationary in one place. And there's a set of between 4 to 6 targets, usually 5, but it depends on the stage. And the object of speed steel is on the buzzer as quickly as you can engage each target once. So like plink, 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 like that. And you do that 5 times, and your 3 best times are added up, and your 2 worst times are thrown out. And similar where whoever has the fastest times wins, but there are categories. So like different kinds of firearms compete within their own category.
Okay.
And it's the same for both. And it depends on the size of the bullet, as well as what kind of firearm and modifications, things like that. Yeah, so it's the same thing where like you wouldn't have a stock Toyota Camry racing against any other faster car. Pick another car that's every car is faster than that. You know what I mean?
I do.
So, but there are people who race the Camrys,
Mhm.
so to say, and they have great matches. That would, yeah, I could talk about it a lot, but that's
I appreciate that.
uh-huh.
And then in terms of the speed lighting round, so like you were saying, speed steel,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So are they kind of lined up in a row?
It depends on the stage.
Oh, interesting.
So yes, so there's always what's called a stop plate,
Mhm.
and that's the last one that you shoot. So what makes both of these kinds of competition fun is you have to have a plan, and when you're doing the stage, you execute the plan. And so you want to have a plan that you can remember, but is also as efficient as possible. And sometimes it'll be like you have to go back and forth from the left side to the right side of the range and back to the middle, or sometimes they are just in a row 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But it all, there are people who this is their hobby and
Yeah.
they invent stages. It's really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's
So
so
they
much
just sort
fun.
of invent stages, and it's always like a unique and new experience slightly every time.
Yes, yeah.
That sounds like fun.
And there are some stages. Here's the last thing I'll say that are called qualifiers, and a qualifier is something that has been approved by. I'm going to really distill this.
Mhm.
It's been approved by like a national committee, and that ends up being a stage that you score, and your scores are compared to other people within your division. And so that's how you get rankings, is the qualifiers. So you could actually totally bomb out everything, but if you do really well on the qualifier, then you can be ranked as a really good shooter. Most people don't operate like that, but theoretically that's possible.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a great sport.
And what's the barrier to entry? So how much does somebody need to spend on a firearm and bullets to show up at the door, or can you rent them?
At the there's no renting of firearms at these, but the easiest thing to get into would be speed steel, because you could shoot that with a 22 caliber rifle. And in fact, the first times I did speed steel, I did it with a bolt action 22 caliber rifle, which is not the kind of thing that's known for being the fastest, because you have to work the bolt every time. But it was so much fun to me. I didn't care. I was in it to have fun. And then eventually I started trying different things. But what I'm getting at is, to get in a match is only like $20. And you only need 250 rounds at most. So if you're shooting a 22, that's another $30.
Yeah.
And then you can buy a used 22 rifle for like $100 to $200, and you can start competing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's very low barrier to entry. With USPSA, you have to have equipment that fits a certain criteria. So like you have to have a belt and a holster and certain kind of magazine holders. You have to have more magazines, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, but even still, like now the rules have changed so much that if you concealed carry, you can play from concealed carry. So you don't even have to have specialized competition equipment. You can draw right from your belt.
That's fascinating.
It's really cool. Yeah. The sport has done an amazing job keeping up with the times and keeping up with gear and what people are doing.
And I would imagine a sport like that would be more welcoming than others, possibly. You know what I mean?
Than like lacrosse?
Yeah.
Or hockey?
Yeah.
Where you're going to get your teeth knocked out?
Yeah.
One of my favorite things about these sports also is that surprisingly, they're apolitical.
Yeah.
People don't go there to talk politics. Now, every now and then you're going to see someone with some kind of thing, but that's like you can't go to the grocery store without seeing something.
Yeah.
But most people are not interested in talking about anything political. They focus on the sport, and it's about community. And so in that regard, yes, it's very easy to get into, and it is very welcoming. And when you go there, people assume you just want to learn and have fun.
And that's the goal.
Yeah.
As opposed to that stiff competition and some other things.
Oh, truly. And also when I compete, I have no dreams of being like a cup winner or a champion or something.
Yeah.
I got into it because I just wanted to be better with my own firearms. So
I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the proficiency thing. I just want to be good at what I do.
Yeah. And how much does it take to be proficient? That's another misnomer, right? Because like before I joined the military, I just assumed that it took a very special kind of person to be proficient at firing a firearm. When in reality, if you're steady, you're stable, you know how to hold the weapon, you know how to harness things right, you can become quite proficient as long as you have those foundational things, right?
So there's a lot of different ways to shoot. And that's something that I love so much about it. So like a person who might be more inclined to do long distance, careful, slow shooting might not be as good at the John Wick running around kind of stuff, you know? And conversely, someone who's doing the John Wick thing might not be interested in very methodically putting one shot down range, you know? And so how long does it take to become proficient? I look at it as a sport.
Yeah.
And here's how I'll answer that question is, to me, being good at any sport, or really most things in the world, is about most physical things in the world. is about muscle memory. How often are you doing the thing? How often are you practicing? So I was taking lessons with my instructor, and those were certainly foundational. But for me, what really got me to become as comfortable as I am was practicing at home, either in the garage or the basement or my bedroom, anywhere that I wasn't bothering anybody, because there's a lot of loud clicky noises,
Yeah.
you know? But I think that for me personally, it was probably about 3 to 4 years. And really it's a matter of time, because I've also met guys and gals and everyone in between on the range and at matches. And there are some people who have said, I've only been doing this a year, and they're amazing, but it's because that's what they're doing in their spare time, is they're practicing at home. And I've met people who have been an inspiration to me, who have been doing it for 20 years, and they make it look like an effortless joke. And only when they get too old and have to go out and can't compete because they have a walker anymore will I be relevant, because it's been a lifestyle for them. So,
I get what you're saying.
Yeah, so it's definitely like so many other things in life, you get out what you put into it. And I think that it's something that can't be rushed. For me, it's an art form. It's a martial art form. And so being patient. And here's the last thing I'll say on that. Last thing. One of my favorite things about shooting is that if you're the slightest bit dishonest with yourself, you don't hit what you're aiming at. And that feedback is instantaneous. And most commonly for me, like I'm still working through things. I'll always be working through things. Okay. But for me, it's when I'm pressing the trigger, am I seeing exactly what I should be seeing when I'm pressing the trigger? Or am I pushing it too quickly because I want to get the shot off? So that's being dishonest with myself. And the result is right there. And so it's a very mind-body balance thing for me. And whenever I'm done with a day at the range, I can say, like, I don't talk down to myself, but I could say, like, well, here's where you were lying to yourself. And here's where you need to be more honest and slow down. And so for me, it's a very meaningful thing being proficient. And so it's, even though I'm where I'm at right now, it's an ongoing process. There's always a better musician.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It totally does. And I relate it almost back to, like, even with like this podcast, like my first couple of episodes were just garbage. like they were garbage, but I got more proficient as time went on. And it took, I would say, about 8 or 9 episodes before I started finally getting it dialed in. And when I do have like one interview a week instead of 2, I feel like I lose a little, because you lose that sort of mental memory and that sort of memory of what it takes to set everything up and what it takes to go through the motions and all that stuff. And so I would imagine it's kind of similar to what you're talking about.
And the same thing happens where when you get new information,
yeah,
it's a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
And so anything that happens before that new information has to catch up to the new information and change with it. And you become a new kind of producer or a new kind of shooter or whatever. Yeah, those revelatory moments are so important.
Yeah.
Right? And they only come when you fuck around and find out.
Yeah. I appreciate that. That's awesome. I haven't heard that term until the last time I heard that term was in the military. You have to fuck around and find out. And it's so true. So true. Is if you don't do the work, you can expect great results.
Yes. Yeah. And something that makes me kind of sad about, and this is not a new thought at all, what I'm about to say.
Yeah.
But it's relevant, where it's so easy to go on YouTube and see someone doing an amazing job at something, and then try and pick up that hobby and suck at it and think, oh, well, there's no reason to even try this. I don't have this. I'll never be that good. So let me put it down. And anything worth doing takes work.
100%. 100%. And I still wrestle with that, right? That whole negative self-talk thing is still huge, right? So even at this time, in this stage, so it takes a lot of effort to break that negative self-talk. And like, because you tend to focus on where you screwed up and where you did wrong and what you did and the way you can get better and all that stuff, instead of taking that moment to just, this is a cool experience. I'm glad I did this. Let's enjoy the moment.
Yeah.
And just embrace life. And that's been a recent revelation for me.
Yeah. And I'm a firm believer also that those voices are not our own. It's like, because we wouldn't want that for ourselves. We wouldn't want it. I call them, they're gremlins, right?
Yeah.
We wouldn't want gremlins for anyone we love.
No.
So why would we want them for ourselves, right? Therefore, it can't be our own voice, I guess. Let's move on.
No, but I really appreciate that perspective. It brings a fresh sort of look at it. And the way my brain works is I think in patterns, right? And so anytime that there's a new pattern that can emerge that I can learn from, I always feel like I'm better off. So I really appreciate that. I'm going to have to chew on that for a while, because that's going to have to reshift how I think about things, because I really like that. I'm going to steal that. I hope you don't mind.
You're going to masticate in public on that?
Yeah. I love that. I adore your sense of humor. I really do. Oh, that's awesome.
I'm having such a good time.
Me too. So what's the best score you've gotten so far?
69,420. No, I have won some speed steel matches, local speed steel matches. I've never gone to an area match or a national match.
Okay.
So the way it works is you have your local, which is like everybody who's a member at the range goes to the range. Maybe you have some people who are touring around who join you, but mostly it's like a community of typical shooters. Beyond that is an area match, which is like combined states.
Okay.
And then beyond that, you have a national match. I've won some area matches for speed steel, and I'm really, really proud of that. And that was all, like I was saying, practicing in my basement at the time. And so what I would do, well, let me take a step back, actually. If you go to my website, which I should probably say the website, right?
Yeah, you should.
Self-promotion thing. It's firediscipline.com. If you go to firediscipline.com and look at the armory, you'll see a particular rifle I have there called a Strybog. It's not worth talking about the firearm. You can look that up in your spare time. But it shoots a pistol caliber. It shoots a 9mm. And I built this around being as fast as possible. I love it. And it's as easy to shoot as possible. And so what I would do in my basement was, with this particular firearm, I would practice the movements and just develop the muscle memory, because that's all it is. And then the second part, that's the first part, is the muscle memory. The second part is when the buzzer goes off, it's this Zen thing of trying not to be fast.
Yeah.
Because if I try to be fast, I screw it up. It's just going through the motions. It's just like, it's like one of the best pieces of advice I ever got from a completely different field was from a piano teacher. And he died earlier this year. His name was Mark Westcott. Mark Westcott was an amazing pianist and a famous, possibly notorious piano teacher in Portland, depending on how you knew him. And I liked going to his master classes because he would just spew wisdom. And also, I love the piano. It's my favorite instrument to record. It's beautiful. So anyways, one thing he said one time is the reason we practice is so that in performance, it seems effortlessly spontaneous. And that has lived with me for years. And that's how it is in this world too. So you ask, what's the highest score I ever got? The only times I've won ever is because I have practiced well. And when I was performing, I wasn't thinking about going fast. I was just performing. And I did my best. And that I was so proud of that. And I'll tell you, it's also, there's an amazing feeling to come from doing things wrong or having bad habits to actually winning at something, whatever the sport is or whatever the thing is. Or, there's so many There's so many beautiful things we can do. And so for me, it was blowing shit up a little bit.
And I can relate to that in so many ways. Because I remember, like, I wasn't really good at a lot of things growing up. Like, I really struggled just in general.
There's so much behind that statement.
Yeah.
You want to unpack it now or later?
Well, that's up to you, but that's me not knowing I was autistic until I was 37. And struggling through high school because I knew all the answers, but because I couldn't show my work, they would fail me. And going through at a time, this is like the 1990s as well, where there just wasn't, and my father was not supportive. And the only sport I was ever in was cross country. And I was usually the slowest person in the cross country realm. And then when I joined the military, I realized I could shine. And that was the first time where I started to actually set above my peers and was given permission to succeed.
That is such a wonderful thing.
Yeah. And I can attribute the military to saving my life because I grew up feral. My dad was never around. And it was just me raising myself. Love you, Dad. You know what we've been through. But, and so when I joined the military, I learned structure. I learned how to get along with people. I learned how to respect an individual for what they bring to the table, regardless of their background, regardless of their experience, regardless of their... It doesn't matter. I'm here to save your life. You're here to save my life. We are brothers or sisters in arms together. And that can exist outside of what my normal experience was. And so that part of it itself gave me the strength and the courage to go to college once I got done with the military. And what do you know? I got 4.0s all the way through. I barely got D's in high school. And so to have the confidence and the structure and learning how to do and exist in the world and sort of be yourself has been immeasurable. And I know a lot of people don't have that in this day and age. A lot of people don't have that person in their life that says you can. Because that was the moment that switched, right? I'll never forget. It was a professor in college, and I took his class on a whim, and he told me that I was smart. And it was the first time I believed anybody who said, you're smart. Because I thought it was stupid up until that moment. It changed the whole trajectory of my life. It was the one person who said you can.
What was the professor's name?
TM Cell. Yeah.
Shout out.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure he's very disappointed in me, but that's another story for another time.
Is the heat on again?
It should not be. Hold on.
I'm sweating even worse than before.
And welcome back. Thank you for taking another break. Sorry about the heat thing in here. This is the first time we're using this. Mm-hmm. So what was it like for you growing up?
Oh, my God. Oh, it was perfect. Nothing bad ever happened.
That's fair.
I grew up in South Florida.
Okay.
And I kind of got out of there as soon as I could. And I've lived a number of places. I spent 3 years at Florida State.
Okay.
And that was amazing. And later found myself here because I was married and my spouse got a job in the Capitol. And I've been in Salem since 2016.
Do you like it here as much as I do? Just curious.
I feel like Salem is maybe the most poorly managed city I've ever lived in.
Oh, 100%.
And I'm so sad to say that because I don't like talking down about literally anything. I don't feel good talking down about things.
Yeah.
But there's also personal reasons that I have for wishing things in Salem were different.
That's fair.
But, yeah. How about you? Are you from around here originally?
No, I'm from Snohomish, Washington, which is a podunk redneck town in the middle of nowhere.
Uh-huh.
And I wanted to get the hell out of there too.
Yeah.
Like, there had to be something better.
Yeah.
Like, and I love it here because I can be authentically autistic here. And I have never had that experience where I have a day job that supports me being autistic, gives me the accommodations that I need to be successful in my job, but then also allows me the opportunity to do this amazing thing. And if it wasn't for this podcast, I would be a shut-in. I would definitely be one of those agoraphobic autistic people that never got out of the house, that would never talk to a stranger, that would never approach anybody. But now that I have a podcast, it gives me permission to go up to random strangers that I think are awesome and say, hey, can we have a conversation?
So yeah, you're totally hitting on a subject that's been hard for me, as I find it so difficult to connect with people around here.
Mm-hmm.
And I've lived a lot of other places, and anywhere I've lived before, I've had a big clique of friends, and that hasn't happened here in all that time. And for sure, it's not because of a shortage of approaching people or trying to talk to people. For whatever reason, it just hasn't panned out. Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, you can't win them all.
That's fair. At the same time, though, it just seems like, I don't know. You're a very cool person, and I just have a hard time believing that people wouldn't think that. You know what I mean?
Well, it takes one to know one.
That's fair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you. It's okay because I know what I am and I exist independently of other people's approval, even though it feels nice to have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think we'll ever get to a spot where people are just accepting of other people regardless?
Oh, wow.
Because that's what I strive for, right? That's what I hope we can accomplish at some point in my life.
Sure, let's open a can of worms, Shawn.
I just don't know if we can.
Do you have a bigger can of worms we can open right now? Or is that your big?
That's the biggest one I got.
That's the biggest one you got?
That's the biggest one I got.
Will people ever accept each other regardless?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
Because I would love to see that.
Is that?
I would love to see that. And I guess it's my autistic brain. I don't know. But I just don't understand why we can't get there. I just don't understand it. And it pisses me off when I see those obstacles where people just aren't accepting of people just like, I don't understand it. You know what I mean?
May I think about that for a second?
Yeah.
Because I feel like I know what you mean.
Yeah.
And I don't want to just blurt out some random nonsense.
I appreciate how thoughtful you are and how you think about things before you sort of blurt things out. I really respect that.
Thank you for your patience.
Yeah.
Thank you. Will we ever get there? Okay, so you actually want me to take a shot at answering the question?
I would love to hear your perspective on this.
Sure. You're asking the firearms trainer, babe.
Yeah.
This question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Because who else can talk about this?
I know. If not me, then who?
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you. For once, I feel so seen.
Yeah.
So, first of all, okay, here we go. First of all, as long as we live in a capitalist society, I don't think it's possible. Because essentially we're forced to commodify every single thing, including other people. I'm not going to say I know what the correct economic system is, but I would guess it would involve like maybe just a little more sharing and maybe just a little redistribution of wealth. I mean, kind of in a way, also your question is like, can we end suffering?
Yeah.
And I don't think we can end suffering. I think to live is to suffer. It's also to experience joy. Like, I'm not going to be just total Tim Burton over here and be
Right.
like, or surely there's some other philosopher who is just like, everything is shit. I'm not a nihilist. But I think, first of all, we have to level the playing field for a lot of people. I think passing something like the Equal Rights Amendment would be a good start. I think cannabis needs to be legal everywhere, and anybody who's ever been in trouble for it needs to
Expunged.
be expunged, and in some cases paid retribution.
100%.
Right? We need some justice. We need some justice.
Yeah.
And I think after we have some justice, we have to reframe how we look at our physical environment and start respecting the earth a little bit more, because, as we said before, you get what you put in. And then once we solve all of those problems, how do we start doing that with people? Well, here's what I'll say. I think people commit crime because they feel hopeless. I think people resort to violence because they feel hopeless. And to me, that means people don't feel like they have opportunities, or they don't have the same opportunities. And I think that tertiary education should be free.
Oh, 100%.
Right? If we have money to drop bombs, we have money to educate people. Healthcare should be free. Same thing. And I think once people have access to the things they need, quick backpedal. Every conservative likes to talk about the line life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, right?
Yep.
So for me, those words only have meaning if we apply them to life is healthcare. Liberty is the ability to speak to who we want without being surveilled, among other things. And to me, pursuit of happiness is education. Otherwise, those words don't mean anything. And I think if we were to give people those actual things, then yes, I think we would start moving towards a society where we see each other as collaborators and not competitors. But again, in the capitalist framework, everyone's a potential competitor, and that makes me very sad. So I hope that's that's at all in the ballpark. Thanks for inviting me to rant.
No, I appreciate that so much, right? Because one of the things that I push back on every time is the idea of healthcare for all, right? And here's where I'm going with that. Anyone who suggests that healthcare for all would actually increase your costs doesn't understand how the current healthcare system works. You're trying to say that it's going to increase our cost and increase taxes and all this stuff. We're already paying $1,000 in deductibles. We're already paying all of these premiums out of our paycheck. So is our employer paying thousands and thousands of dollars for a healthcare system that is not free. And then you have something like the VA, which is something that I'm a part of, that actually works fairly well. Does it need tweaks? Yes. However, there's already an example of what socialized medicine looks like in this country. We could take that and expand it, and it would actually save people money if you took the profit out of healthcare. Whenever we made that shift to profitizing healthcare and the concerns of shareholders over patients is when we went off the cliff.
It's not a wellness model. It's a profit model.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's sad because we are not profits. We're people. We're people.
Not in a capitalistic society. We are but crucibles for financial transactions.
For the very, very few that seem to make it, while the everyday person is struggling to find a place to live. Ugh. Drives me absolutely bonkers. Absolutely bonkers.
There's a funny saying, if you go far enough left, you get your guns back.
I love that.
It's true. I'm not smart enough to make that up. Someone else
Oh,
made
I
that
love
up.
that though. That's perfect. But you're absolutely right. Like, we live in this strange society where we value material things that we can no longer afford and no longer procure.
It's dysfunction at its purest, yes.
And I don't know how to change that.
Psychology Today had a great article about dysfunction, and I wish I could just provide a link for it. But it was basically, it was about what you just said, among other things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because something's got to give at some point. Because I agree what you're talking about, how life has to have some level of suffering. But I don't think it has to have the manufactured suffering that at such a grandiose scale that exists today.
You get exactly what I'm talking about. Yes, when I say things like suffering, like to live is to suffer, everyone gets their heart broken.
Yeah.
For example.
Yeah.
You're not, so, and in a way, we're lucky to get our heart broken, even though it sucks. But to use the phrase manufactured suffering is perfect.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we've solved so many problems tonight.
It's just a start.
we should run for president.
No way. No way. I did run for political office.
How did that go? What did you run for?
I ran for the House of Representatives.
Congratulations.
As a Republican.
Congratulations.
Who supported marriage equality, gay rights, and the freedom of all of that stuff. The stars were aligned. There was a Democrat in the office at the time who was Catholic and was pro-life and didn't believe in gay marriage.
What a play of opposites.
Yes.
Oh my God.
And I was allowed to run because of the Democrat that in part. Then when I didn't win, I came 6,000 votes short. I came really close. That's
amazing.
I knew I didn't want to do it. Like, as soon as I got to the finish line, I knew I would never do that again because the whole system is just corrupt.
Oh, I could never run for political office because that's just a game that I don't want to get into.
Oh, it is a game. And everybody is your friend until the rent is due.
Have you ever heard the saying, politics is Hollywood for ugly people?
Yeah.
There's another
true. That is so true. Because I was a public information officer for the Washington State Senate for a session. Mm-hmm. And I supported one Democrat and two Republicans at the same time. Because there was this majority coalition caucus where two Democrats flipped to stop like taxation and certain things. And they needed somebody who would be willing to write a press release for a Democrat on the same day as a Republican. And I was the only one who was willing to do that. And so I'm so glad I had that opportunity because I got a chance to see how politics really works. And it's not in our best interest. It just really isn't. And it's so disheartening. Because I saw that experience and I'm like, oh, now I get it. Now I understand why we're in the situation that we're in. And you cannot be yourself and run for public office. There is somebody telling you you have to live this way, you have to view that way, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to view this, you have to view that, or we're not giving you any money. And money is what wins politics.
Sounds like we should just learn how to shoot.
Yeah, I'll take it.
May as well just go to the range.
Yeah. Yeah. And enjoy yourselves and have a fun time. Yeah. So I want to close out with this. And it's something that I always sort of talk about on this program. Be kind to people is what I lead with, right? Because that opens the door to so many possibilities and so many opportunities. And my plea to all of you listening is just to be kind to people and be respectful and just let people be who they are. And I'm hoping that someday we'll get there. So yeah, Allison, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
This has been an amazing conversation, and I hope we can be friends after this.
What's that entail?
What does that entail?
Does it start with a handshake?
Yes, it does.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, this has been really fun.
I agree. Let's do
Yeah.
this again sometime.
Sure.
You got it. Thank you, everybody.
Wait, don't you really?
But that's it. Yeah.
Wait, what would we talk about next time?
We can talk about that later.
Okay. Do I say bye?
You could say bye, yeah. I would love to talk to you about the whole difference between leftist and liberal.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. I would love to have that
For
conversation.
another episode.
For another episode.